Kentucky's roster is already on the right track, but if they want to become a national title contender, they need to add Milan Momcilovic.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of the show, we're going to be breaking down what we've seen from Kentucky on the recruiting trail, Cayden Daughtry, CJ Rosser, but of course, I want to start with Milan Momcilovic, who is still going through the draft process, and if Kentucky lands him, they would become a national title contender. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So, in my opinion, Kentucky's roster is in a pretty good spot right now. They've got a really solid backcourt. I like what they've done in the front court. If they're able to keep Malachi Marino, which as the days go by seems like less and less of a possibility, but fingers are crossed here in Lexington. We are just hopeful that Kentucky finds a way to lure him back to the blue and white for one more season. It's a good team. And as I have detailed on a recent episode of the show, I think it's better than last year's team. And there's a lot of logic and argument and sound reasoning that goes into that opinion if you want to check that episode out. But as it stands, it's not that much better than last season's roster. It's not. It's a good team, but it's not a national championship caliber roster. It's not an SEC title roster on paper right now. They need more. Frankly, they needed a star like Tyron Stokes to add to this group. Had they been able to land him, we'd be talking a little bit differently about the ceiling of this current team. Adding Iowa State's Milan Momcilovic, who is currently going through the draft process, but if he comes back to college, Kentucky becomes one of maybe 3 schools that can actually pursue him and get him to commit. If the Wildcats were to add the sharpshooter from Iowa State, it would put them back into the national championship conversation. I'll give you 3 reasons why here. First and foremost, Momcilovic would solve Kentucky's only remaining, or the biggest remaining issue, I should say, and that is efficient half-court shot making. Kentucky already has creators in Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins. They have guys who can play really well in transition, like Cam Williams. They have players down low who will make an impact, like Malachi Marino and Frank Kepnang. They've got guys across the board that can do different things to varying degrees of success. They've got a good team. They do not have a blow you out of the water, high efficiency, half-court shot maker like Momcilovic. They've got players who can score. They don't have players who can score that have proven to be scorers at an insanely efficient level. And somebody like Momcilovic would raise Kentucky's ceiling and give them a true high-level scoring threat who can punish different switches, who can stretch the floor at 6'8". He's got off-ball movement. There's a lot of different things that Momcilovic, just in terms of spot-up efficiency, can do for this offense. It's the kind of ceiling raiser that turns Kentucky from a good SEC team to a team that can win the entire conference and a team that can make a push for a Final Four or a national title. Teams that make a run usually have guys like this. The second thing here, Milan would completely transform Kentucky's spacing and then their lineup balance as well. So it solves their half-court issues, right? Because you have a go-to guy late in the shot clock or just someone you know is effectively a coin flip shooter, has proven to be already at college. But he would also change Kentucky's spacing and their balance because right now, the roster, they've got rim pressure. They've got guys that can score in the mid-range. They've got guys who can handle the ball. They've got defensive length. They've got rebounding. They've got rim protection with Marino and Kepnang. You could also argue Njai has the physical tools to be that as well. Cam Williams is a proven defender. But adding an elite stretch four, and I mean the best in college basketball, effectively, next to those pieces would create a very difficult situation for opposing defenses. It would make Kentucky an extremely difficult guard because defenses now have to account for just a little bit more than Zoom Diallo trying to get downhill, or Alex Wilkins creating in the mid-range, or Cam Williams being the only shooter on the floor. If you can put Williams and Momcilovic on the floor at the same time, it starts to change the gravity, I guess, of each half-court possession, where teams have to sort of not necessarily pick their poison, but kind of pick their poison. Like, you have to kind of play them Kentucky one-on-one straight up. You can't overly commit to one guy. If Alex Wilkins is having a really good game, you can't send a double. You can't put more ball pressure on him. You can't hedge. You cannot overcommit to one side of the floor or the other. If you got Williams and Momcilovic out there at the same time, all of a sudden, one ball reversal, and you got an open three from a guy who's shooting 40+% from either side, from either guy, by the way. And what really sucks for opposing teams is, what makes it even worse is if you have Diallo and Wilkins out there at the same time as well. If your lineup includes Zoom, Alex, Momcilovic, and Cam, all of a sudden, you got two of the best shooters in the conference, one of the best shooter in the country as well, I need to note, and two of the best playmakers in the nation. It's not just going to be one guy driving kick to one shooter. It's going to be drive and kick from either guy, honestly, to an open shooter, one of two of the best open shooters in the country. So it creates more gravity, makes it really difficult to guard Kentucky consistently, especially if Kentucky's averages play out, if they just shoot the way that those guys have shot. And it's not like you're going to get an open look every single time down the floor, but I trust Mark Pope's scheme with these three-point shooters to make things look a lot prettier and just have more consistency, I guess I should say. And that actually takes me to my third point, which is I think at this point, what the fans want is they want Kentucky to win in March. I mean, that's been the case for a long time. Yes, you'd like to win in the regular season. I still want to win in March, and it's year 3, so it's time to put up or shut up. And last year's team, chaotic offensively, was relying on like inconsistent creation bursts, I guess I should say, from Kentucky's guards. And there was no, outside of Ortega, there was no reliable get a bucket option who sort of stabilized you possession to possession. And even then, Ortega did have his off nights. With Momcilovic's efficiency and the lack, or I guess the plus here is that he doesn't need to have the ball to be impactful. It can stabilize tournament possessions, especially when the game does slow down. When you get into the half court and you aren't running as consistently and you're running your sets. I mean, I think this has kind of become a cliche. The tournament is where coaches, I understand people want to make a big deal about guard play and get hot and all of that. The tournament is really where coaches shine the most, where the chess match becomes, I think, more apparent to most people watching. And if you're slowing down, if you're running sets, if you're trying to stabilize possession to possession, finding more efficient shots, somebody like Milan makes it, again, to go back to defensive stress, makes it a lot more difficult, because at that point, in a tight game, you do kind of have to pick your poison if Kentucky is playing even average offensively. So it's structure, gravity, late shot clock, functional offense, instead of just, oh, let's go set a high screen and just hope something happens. So combined with the upside and the physicality and the defensive potential of this roster, if you add Momcilovic as a floor spacer and a shooter, Kentucky starts to look significantly more like a national title contender than just another dangerous team in the SEC. They need Momcilovic for a variety of reasons. He's a star. He doesn't just add points per game. He adds you a lot that changes the dynamic of what your team looks like, specifically your offense. We'll see if Kentucky's able to reel him in, if he does come back from the NBA. If he doesn't, you're just going to have to find a way to sell yourself on the roster in its current state, which is, it's not a hard sell. But Momcilovic, man, it's clear that this roster was looking for a star, and they got one more left on their board. So, all right. I want to talk about how Kentucky staff has been all over, not just EYBL, but a variety of different circuits that are going on across the country. I want to talk about 2 players specifically, one of which did not have a good EYBL Session II in Memphis. Another player who I had not heard of before that has absolutely exploded onto the scene, at least in my mind, and scoring the ball at a very, very impressive rate. We'll get to both those players here in just a moment. Before we do it, though, tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here and every single possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right, turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. I really like using FanDuel during the playoffs here because everything I need is right in one place. You can check stats, trends, matchups before making your picks, which makes the whole experience just feel so much more informed. And whether you're looking at player props or just following your favorite stars, it adds another level of excitement to every single game. And it's even more fun here now that we've gotten down to the conference finals. It's very easy to navigate FanDuel's app, and it makes playoff basketball just a lot more engaging from start to finish. You can head to FanDuel.com to get started today. That is FanDuel. Play your game. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you have not already. Appreciate you guys watching today, talking about Milan Momcilovic. Let's get to the recruiting. And yes, there will be a lot more recruiting conversations that unfold over the course of this week here on the show. So if you're looking to know what's going on with Mark Pope on the recruiting trail, who's he looking at, who's he been offering, we're going to have a lot more to talk about than just these two players, but these were the two that I wanted to highlight because one of them is very clearly a major priority for Kentucky, and he didn't play well. And another one I think is kind of new, at least to me, and he played exceptionally well despite his size. We'll get to that in a moment. But I want to talk about, first and foremost, Kentucky has been all over the place over the last week or so. Kentucky had a number of staffers at the EYBL Session II in Memphis. Mikhail McLean was at Adidas 3SSB and I believe it's Mishawaka, Indiana. McLean was also at EYBL. Mark Fox was at Puma Pro 16 in Tulsa. Nick Robinson was at UAA in Spooky Nook, Ohio. That's Under Armour circuit. And Kentucky's been working right now really, really hard to kind of get an idea of who their major targets should be in the 2027 cycle. And for those of you that might be upset that they're only like taking a public serious look at this now, this has kind of been the consensus across the board for a lot of different teams that are trying to get involved in high school recruiting. The transfer portal pushed things back by a significant margin, it feels like, for some programs where all of their focus and attention was pointed towards who can we get in the portal to add to next year's roster. The high school recruiting can wait. Obviously, you can do both at the same time, but even then, like EYBL, like the sessions aren't really heating up until now. Peach Jam's not until midsummer. Like you've got a lot of time to sort of figure out what this class is really about. And Jacob Polacek, I believe, said this in a recent article over at KSR, and this has been the consensus based on what other scouts have said. Polacek said this, several other guys said this. The top of the 2027 recruiting class is a lot more currently about ceiling than production. So what that means is you're not necessarily seeing a ton of extremely polished, high floor type guys that are just producing and are efficient and are just good for who they are, size-wise, skill-wise. Like you're not seeing a ton of consistent skill, I guess I should say. You are seeing raw athleticism, occasional moments of consistent shot making, impressive stretches from these guys, but there are lulls, and it's kind of a wait and see right now. Even a guy like CJ Rosser, who is currently the #1 overall player in the 27 class, is not like across the board like, oh yeah, he's the best. Like there are several other players, several of which we'll get to later on this week, King Gibson being one of the big ones there. But there's no consensus #1. There's no Tyron Stokes. There's no Cooper Flagg. This is now 2 years in a row where it feels like there's a lot of unknown about these kids because they're not showing who they could be consistently. And I think a good example of that, unfortunately, is CJ Rosser, who again, like I just mentioned, is the #1 overall player, at least according to the 24/7 Sports composite. And Pope went to fish with him a few weeks ago. I believe Kentucky had an unofficial visit with him on like February 4th, early in the month of February. 6'10", 195, stretch 4. I really, really like this kid's shooting touch. Like I like who he is as a scorer that can translate to the NBA. He played really well for Team USA's U16 team. He won gold in 2025. His stats at Southeastern Prep in Orlando weren't really necessarily impressive, but they were solid given his shot diet, which is really tough. He is a very lanky, tall player, like just skinny, wiry player. Kind of reminds you of a guy like Nate Ament, Jabari Smith, Brandon Ingram, Kevin Durant archetype that you could go down there. Basically a rangy, lengthy forward who is a 3-level scorer. Any sort of lack of strength, he has, at least during his high school tape, negated with flexibility and a tough handle. He's got one of the best shooting forms I've seen on a kid of his size, again at 6'10", but I'm going to keep it a buck. He reminds me of somebody like Kevin Knox, Jaden McDaniels. Needs a much tighter handle, needs to speed his game up. He is not necessarily, to me, all due respect, in his current state, a star at the next level. And I don't want to bash him because he's got a lot more ball to be played between now and wherever he goes to college. And if he comes to Kentucky, like we're gonna shoot for the stars here. It seems like when you turn on his high school tape, he's one player. When you go and watch him play at these circuits or against more difficult competition, he's a bit of a different player. And the shot selection's not phenomenal. The efficiency has been really poor. And during Session 2 here in Memphis, he did not play well. He ended up shooting 28.3% from the floor over the course of 4 games here from the 14th to the 16th. He went 0 of 6 from 3, 0 of 5 from 3, 0 of 5 from 3, 1 of 4 from deep in his 4 contests. It was he shot 65% from the charity stripe. It was not the most impressive offensive output from Rosser. And when you actually go and watch some of his games, you can go back a few weeks ago, like about a month or so ago, and go watch him during Session 1 in Atlanta. Go watch the game like maybe against Team Thod, where he just got banged up. I mean, extremely physical defense was allowed to be played in that game. And even Rosser in that game still finished with 3 steals, 3 blocks, a couple of assists, 9 boards. But he shot 6 of 16 from the floor and 1 of 9 from 3. Again, I like the form, I like the touch, but the shot over the last month or so has not been falling. And he's not a player, to me, against these high-profile kids that can consistently get to the rim. In his high school tape, he was able to kind of bully through everybody, and in transition, he was yamming on people. But that's his high school tape. Now you get to EYBL, and the story's a little bit different, at least statistically, and just based on the videos that I watched. And I'm not just talking about highlights. I'm talking about like the games. He needs to work on his strength. He needs to work on his handle. If this is the type player that he is going to be a stretch for, who is a versatile scorer that can translate to the NBA, he's got a lot to work on. And this comes back to what I just said a minute ago. This class is raw. Cannot believe the fan tool thing was up that whole time. This class is raw. And players like Rosser, they've got a very high ceiling. If he's able to even score with average efficiency, he's got a very high ceiling as a player. But he did not play well this past week. He's not played well for about a month. And he is arguably Kentucky's top priority, which I will also say this. While he may end up being a phenomenal player, when you see the negatives, when you see the missed shots, when you see the consistently poor play against these kids, it does start to ask. You do start to kind of ask the question: is he a system fit for a guy like Pope, who I don't know if he's ever had a player like Rosser. He's definitely not had one that's had as high of a ceiling, that's for sure. But he's not had a player with this skill set before at the 4, where he's playing like a Nate Ament. And Kentucky tried really hard to get a Nate Ament last year. He tried to get a Tyron Stokes this year. Like, Kentucky is now going after players like Rosser, and I'm just asking the question, like, yeah, they're really, really good. Is this the type of player that you need for long-term success if they're going to be high utilization players, if they're going to be used on virtually every other possession? It's just the question. Very, very, very talented player, very, very high ceiling, has not played well recently. We will watch that space with Rosser. A guy who has played really well that we have not talked about on the show before. We'll get to him here after a sip of water. Is 4-star guard Cayden Daughtry. Daughtry is ranked as the number 17 overall player, number 5 point guard, number 4 player in the state of Florida in the 2027 class. He plays at Calvary Christian in Fort Lauderdale. He's a 4-star across the board, ranging between the number 17 overall player and number 22 overall player, lowest on ESPN, highest on 24/7 actually at number 18, but the industry ranking at Rivals has him at 17, which is interesting. According to Rivals /On3, he is 6 feet tall, 160 pounds. 6 foot 160. According to 24/7 Sports, he's 6 foot 155. And you may say, my gosh, could Kentucky take a player like that? Let me read you his stats. Let's just go for session 2 here. 26.8 points per game, 55% shooting. He's shooting 68% inside the arc. 92% from the charity stripe, where he's getting there 6+ times a game. Averaging 3.3 boards, 4.5 assists, 2 steals, half a block, just 2 turnovers per game at 6 feet tall, 160. That is 27, 4.5, 3, and 2 steals per contest here over the course of these 4 games with the Nike EYBL Session II. During Session 1, he averaged 19 points per game, shot 38.5% from 3, still nearly 90% from the charity stripe, 6 boards a game, 4.3 assists, 1 steal, 2.5 turnovers. He has been, over this last week, insanely efficient. He's been a great playmaker. He's been collecting on the defensive end. He is a blur in transition. And the thing that impressed me about him most was his poise and confidence in his decision-making at his size. If he was going to try and get through you, he was going to try and get through you. He did not hesitate. If he was going to pull up for a mid-range shot, he was going to pull up for a mid-range shot. If he was going to back it out and ISO and knock a shot down from the perimeter, he was going to do that. He is fast. He is a great ball handler. He is a phenomenal playmaker. The vision on some of these passes to the corners in transition, in the half court, what have you, were crisp. They were on time. They were smooth. I really, really like what I see out of Daughtry despite his size. Would he, more than likely, be a defensive liability at the next level? Yes. If he's picking up a steal and a half to 2 steals per game, we can kind of live with it, especially with all the other things that he brings to the table. If I'm going to give him a comparison, I'll give you two players here, one of which you know, one of which you may remember. Tyler Ulis, no duh, with the speed, the ball handling, the shot making, the playmaking, just an undersized guard who is a bucket. And then Jared Harper would be my other guy who played at Auburn for, I think, 3 or 4 years. Right when the Tigers were taken off in the SEC. Just extremely fast, creative, flashy players who can go out and score in bunches. He currently leads the EYBL in points per game. Currently leads him in points per game. And he's only a 4-star. He's a top 25 player, and he's really good. He's really good. Even if he's not shooting the cover off the ball, he's still a really good playmaker. He's still a really good ball handler. This is a kid that I'd love to have on next season's roster. Love. Because somehow, if Zoom Diallo is still here, if Alex Wilkins is still here, my gosh, that is a nightmare. Let's say one of them leaves. That's still a huge problem for opposing defenses to have that type of ball handling and creation and speed in Kentucky's backcourt. Very fun player. Has played really, really well over this last week or so. Credit to him. We'll continue to watch him. I believe he just picked up an offer from the Cats finally. Cayden Daughtry. Know the name. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can subscribe wherever you are watching. Would love it if you did so. Follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. Follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_. And follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And God bless.